Okay, so it's time for you to write your synthesis essay. What you need to remember is that you're pretty much writing a research paper. The difference is this one is timed, and you are given the sources to use for your research paper, okay? You're given an introduction to a controversial issue and a question. It's probably an issue that you don't think a lot about in your daily life. It's not going to be any of the big hot button issues, but once you get into it, you'll see that it's probably pretty meaty. So go into it understanding that it's an issue for which there are many points of view, and there may be some fairly serious consequences related to this issue. In addition to the introduction and the question, you are given usually 6 sources, sometimes it's 7, maybe more, but it probably won't be fewer than 6, that are related to that issue. It's probably not going to be black and white. There'll probably be a range of ideas represented related to that issue, okay? And you need to use the sources that are given to you to support your argument. Now remember, your argument is central, and that's what you want to focus on in your essay. So the sources that you're given will include prose. It'll be things like articles, essays, maybe something from the newspaper, maybe an excerpt from a book. There may be graphs and charts and those sorts of things, and you'll need to interpret that. We'll work on that during class as the year goes on. There may be political cartoons, sometimes photos. Those are actually kind of fun to work with. This time around, for your first essay, we probably aren't going to concern ourselves too much with photos and graphs, as you see. By the way, that was my dog dropping his antler, and now he's walking by there, Spencer. Anyway, you are given 15 minutes in the testing situation. You'll be given 15 minutes to read and annotate those sources. In class, that'll look several different ways. For instance, we worked a lot with the sources, much longer than 15 minutes this time around. But eventually we'll probably work up to, on a day that you're writing a synthesis essay, that you have the sources for 15 minutes and then you write the essay in class. Okay, so what do you do with the sources? You use the sources to bolster your claims. Your argument must be central, okay? This is about your argument, all right? So do not make the mistake of summarizing the sources. Don't write an essay where you say, well, this person says this and this person says that, and so there's a lot of different views on this subject. You're not presenting a range of views. You're making an argument, and the sources that you use need to support that argument. For instance, let's say I was going to write a synthesis essay about the long-lasting effect of Henry David Thoreau's work on civil disobedience. I might use Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail to support my claim and point out that in his letter he discusses the paradox that sometimes refusing to follow an unjust law is actually showing the highest respect for the law. It's actually showing a love of law because you want the law to be right morally. And I might explore that issue in a paragraph. And I might say that Henry David Thoreau's ideas live on even today and use the video that we watched in class of the news report about the demonstrations in Hong Kong and how the students there are practicing peaceful civil disobedience much in the tradition of our Henry David Thoreau, and I might use that to show his long-lasting effect. But my argument is about his long-lasting effect. It's not summarizing all the different ways, people have used his work. I'm saying that he remains a very important person, okay? So they are evidence for your claims, not something to summarize. So when you're working with your sources, you need to use at least 3 of them for support for your position. If you use fewer than 3, your score will not be anything above a 4. If you use none, 1, 2, you're going to get a 4 or lower no matter what you do, okay? However, your score will not be higher if you use more than 3 sources. You're not going to get extra points or whatever for using more than one source. If it fits, if it works for the argument that you're making, then go for it. Use more than 3. But in order to get a score of adequate or above, that 5, 6, 7, 8, potentially 9, you need to be using at least 3 of the sources. When you cite your sources in your essay, you can label them as they're labeled in the packet of sources. Source A, source B, etc. You can put that in parentheses. Okay. You can also refer to the sources by the author, title, etc. Say, so-and-so in his book, blah, 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 states that yada, yada. Okay. Or you could just use a quote or a paraphrase in support of your argument and put source C in parentheses, or you could say, according to source C, yada, 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 okay? You want to avoid long quotes from the sources, so the sources are not overwhelming your argument. The bulk of your essay should be your assertions, your reasoning, supported by information from the sources, okay? But while you're doing that, make sure you correctly cite the source. If you directly quote it, if you paraphrase, you need to say where it came from. Within the sentence, according to or as stated in, something like that, or in parentheses. Don't give a bunch of information from a certain source and then at the end say all of this information came from source D or something like that. Don't do that. It needs to actually be woven into your prose. And that, my young students, is how to write a synthesis essay. Good luck to you. They're actually kind of fun, and you'll probably be introduced to several issues that you've never really thought about and discover that there's a whole world out there of interesting ideas to think about when you're exploring a synthesis essay. So good luck, try your best, and I'll talk to you soon.